SYS Presents Adventures in Online Education.
Hello, friends. You're listening to SYS Presents Adventures in Online Education. I'm your host, Natalie Conway. Thanks for being here. On today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Peter Drake. Peter is Associate Professor of Computer Science at Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon. He teaches a variety of courses, including software development and AI and machine learning. His research has involved building artificially intelligent programs to play the classical Asian game of Go, using deep neural networks to analyze photographs of clouds, and creating video games to teach people about earthquake preparedness. Today, Peter and I talk about learning management systems, knowing your purpose as a student, and helping high schoolers learn the basics of how to college. If you're a high school educator or parent of an online high school student, you'll especially want to hear Peter's thoughts today. So, you ready? Let's learn something new. Welcome, Dr. Peter Drake. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited for our audience to hear your insights today and for us to dive in and talk about how the work that we do, K through 12, really prepares kids for that phrase we all use, right? College and career readiness. And so getting them ready to do really well once they come to you. So first off, getting real specific, I want to start talking about learning management systems. So online educators know all about their learning management system, or LMS. It's where assignments are stored, where information is shared, where collaboration happens, and of course, where a lot of the learning occurs in an online course. I'm curious, in your view, what makes a good LMS? And then how can teachers harness those awesome tools in their LMS to really effectively engage with their students?
Well, the first thing I would say is the most important thing is that your LMS needs to be better than not using one at all. Because it may be that you don't need one unless your school has required you to use one. If you have a way of getting your assignments out to the students and getting what they've handed in back to you, maintaining your grade book, communicating with the students, if those things are all working fine, maybe you don't need to add one more layer of technology. But it can be handy to have something that has a little more polished front end on the process, and maintaining your grade book and things like, I want to give this percentage for this category of assignments and that percentage for that category. If you've got lots of files that students need to hand in, emailing them is going to start to get sloppy. And so rather than building your own tools for that, it may be handy to use an LMS. I think the most important thing is that it be easy to use, both for you and for the students. If you're spending all your time fighting against the user interface, that may be doing more harm than good. And you do have to tell the students how to use it. And you need to tell them more than once. You need to put that up on a web page or make a video or something to explain how to hand something in, how to see your feedback, how to check your grades. Just because you explained it on the first day doesn't mean that the communication happened or that they remember it. And it's not always obvious. You also need to verify with them through some other channel that they are in fact getting your feedback, because I think there may be times when teachers spend lots of hours agonizing over careful feedback on papers and assignments, and the students might not read them, and that might be their choice, or it might be that they don't realize that that information is there, or they don't know how to get it. So make sure that that channel is open and stuff is going through. I think an LMS is a good source of on-demand administrative information for students. So when these questions that come up every day, when does this assignment due? What's coming up? Am I missing any assignments? Are there readings? Are there class notes? And they could contact you individually about that. But if they can just click on a link and find the slides for today's class or the list of the readings, That can speed things up. But probably ease of use is the big thing. And technology is at its best when you don't notice it's there, when it just gets out of the way. When you're noticing it, it's because something has gone wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah, that whole streamlined feel and the seamless feel for the student or the user, right, is just so important. That's what's going to keep them engaged with the platform, whatever it might be that you're using. I totally agree with all the points you've made. I especially appreciate that you highlighted for us that we shouldn't assume that students know how to use any particular aspect of the LMS or the LMS at all, and that even though we've taught it once doesn't mean they've learned it. All of those things. So giving them those resources and maybe explaining things more than once, or like you wisely noted, putting a video up. That way kids can watch it, slow it down, speed it up, do what they need to do. I also think it's so crucial. I mean, how many of us have taken an online course and realized weeks later or papers later that the teacher has been commenting on our work and we didn't even see it or didn't know? So making sure that folks are seeing those things. I was just recently talking with a college music professor who does video comments for his comments back to students. So he records a short little video, and he's found that students were really receptive to that because you hear and see intonation and you get those extra cues from the person rather than just that written part of the communication. So that was something that students really appreciated. And I think sometimes it might take professors or teachers a longer time to do that up front, but also maybe not. It's just as fast as typing, right? Or speech to text. So a couple of other ideas there for teachers. And I really also thought it was interesting how you noted that a learning management system is a source of on-demand data. So I had never thought of not using a learning management system before you talked about it, but I think that is one of the things that's really key, is that the student can go in there, see when assignments are due, or figure out what their GPA is right now. It really helps support their organization and their executive functioning a little, and hopefully boosts their independence too and their ownership of their learning, being able to see all of those things at a glance. And like you said, in that really hopefully well done, seamless interface that's provided to them. So these are awesome points. Thank you.
It's nice if it connects with other technology they're using. For instance, if it will let them link the class schedule of when assignments are due and so on into their own Google Calendar or whatever calendar they're using, that saves them a step in setting that stuff up.
Absolutely. We always talk about minimizing the number of clicks it takes to get to what it is you need or are looking for. And always less is more. Always. Alfonso Mendoza from My EdTech Life talks a lot about streamlining the number of apps you're using or the number of platforms so that, folks don't have to learn 3 different systems or 5 different systems. And so, yeah, if it's integrated, if your email is talking to your calendar, is talking to your reminders and assignments, that's brilliant. Yes, 100% agree.
Yeah, that's a huge point that and maybe this will be surprising coming from a computer scientist, but don't use any more technology than necessary. There are lots of cool tools out there that you can find and say, oh yeah, I should use this. This will really add some spark to the classroom. But I mean, you've already got a layer for remote learning, getting Zoom or whatever you're using to work properly, and breakout rooms, and the text chat, and all of that. And then maybe you've got a learning management system, and maybe you've got Google Docs or Word, whatever they're using to produce their assignments, or they're learning, a programming language in one of my classes. And then maybe you have something that's going to let you do live online multiple choice quizzes, Pear Deck or something like that. And those can pile up and they can go wrong. You can waste time in the classroom when you can't get something to start or connect, or you can just become overwhelmed, or the students can easily become overwhelmed if they've also got different instructors in other classes using a completely different set of tools.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to take into account that whole picture of that student's whole day or their whole semester and what that looks like. Yeah. Absolutely. I find that it's really helpful and exceptionally challenging, but to always have a plan B. Okay, if the Pear Deck doesn't work, then what? If a handful of kids have really slow internet that day and they can't do, plan A that I have, then what? So trying to always have that backup plan in mind as well is really helpful, because you're right, the technology piles up really quickly. And we get used to using it because we're creating in it and working in it every day, but really need to be sensitive to our students' experiences with it.
Yeah. And I think I probably had an easier time than others when we had to suddenly shift to remote, because I work with a lot of different technologies. And I think some faculty that, because of their discipline, are lower tech, had a rougher time with that.
Absolutely. You can be a very intelligent person and have a very hard time converting your whole life and your whole teaching experience and learning experience into a digital format. So absolutely. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to ask another question more focused on that transition from high school to higher level education and how we can be best preparing our students. So stick with us. What's the one thing all online schools and programs struggle with? Student engagement and the ability to truly personalize interventions. How do we solve those problems? With the use of Admin Dash, a brand new Canvas LTI tool from SYS Education. Admin Dash allows online teachers to see a risk assessment score that proactively identifies students who may need more specialized attention or intervention, and offers a communication log that provides an outlet for complete transparency among teachers, admin, students, and families. At just 99 cents per student per year, and with no minimum price and no fees, you can't afford to not use Admin Dash. For more information about Admin Dash, contact sales@syseducation.org and start connecting proactively with your online learners. Welcome back, online educators. I'm talking to Peter Drake today. All K-12 teachers are preparing students to be college and/or career ready. We want our students to succeed after they graduate from high school. And we know that success will look differently for different students, and that is all right. That's life. College is certainly one of those pathways to success. Since you do currently teach at the college level, I'd love to dive into what you think online high schools can be doing to prepare students for success in college. What tips do you have for our educators? What advice? How should we be focusing our time?
All right. So specifically for online high schools, if you're preparing students to come to a college where they'll be in person, like Lewis and Clark, then make the students aware of the differences. Commuting, it's going to take you more than 30 seconds to get to your next class, so you need to take that into account.
Darn.
Yeah, you need time to make yourself presentable, whatever that means to you. And then when you walk into a classroom, you're sort of committing to being present for the next hour. You can't choose to turn off your camera. You shouldn't be scrolling through social media in there. And then there are subtle additional channels of communication when you're face-to-face, body language and things like that. So I can look out over a classroom and get a sense of how the audience feels. Are they interested? Are they checked out? Are they lost because I'm moving too fast? Are they bored because I'm moving too slow? And sometimes it's still, well, they're all silent. I don't know which end I fell off of, but it's harder to assess that online. Comedy is easier in person. So if I tell a joke in a classroom, I'll get some laughs or at least some groans. But sometimes, if everyone is muted, which you usually are in an online classroom, I don't get that feedback and the class doesn't get that community building. I had a colleague who gave a talk, over Zoom, and everybody had their cameras off and their mics muted, and they said they were just talking into the void. They had no idea if any of it was landing.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. Conversation works differently because, especially if you have a text chat, it's fine for everyone to talk at the same time. But, you have to take turns when you're in person. And then for preparing for college in general, regardless of whether it's online or in person, you're going to want your students to have a grasp of writing and math and critical thinking and teamwork and all those sorts of things. In some ways, college is just the next 4 grades, but there are some differences. You're kind of on your own for the first time. You're going to be doing your own laundry, managing your own schedule. I have an essay on how to college, and I think you can put a link to that in your show notes.
I can and I will.
But here's some main points. Don't hesitate to ask questions. I think this may be one of the big issues that students have. They're afraid of looking foolish, and they're thinking to themselves, everybody else understands this but me, and I'm just going to stay quiet and sit in the corner and hope nobody notices. And that's really not a good idea, because A, you're wrong. If there's something you're confused about, somebody else is confused about it too. And when you ask the question, they will be glad, even if they don't tell you about it. And also, if you are confused about something, staying quiet is going to cause you to continue to be confused. And the purpose is for you to learn the skills and abilities and material that's in the class, and not to show off what you already know. So if there's a problem, go ahead and ask. Go ahead and raise your hand. Different instructors will have different thoughts about exactly how this works, but many people will say, yes, go ahead, stop me, interrupt me. Because we're up there teaching, and we want to know if it's working. And we can't automatically tell if something landed in your brain. So ask those questions. Ask questions in class, ask them over email or whatever channel you've got for that, and go to office hours. I think that's something that might be a little odd in high school, to go to a teacher's office. Well, a teacher wouldn't have an office probably, but to meet with a teacher outside of class time. But it's expected in college. You're supposed to come and talk to your teachers or TAs. Figure out if there's either something you're confused about, or there's something you're like, I understood it, but I have these additional questions. I want to go further. You're not annoying your teachers. This is, they love it when you do stuff like this. It means the students are engaged and that what we're doing matters. I've heard some people raise the question, if someone is a first-generation college student, they may not realize what office hours means. That means that's the time when I, the instructor, am in my office waiting for students to come ask questions. Some people might misinterpret that as, oh, this is when I'm in my office and I want to be left alone. And that's not what it means.
That's a really good point of clarification. I hadn't thought of that before, but yeah, I can see how folks would misinterpret that to think these are the opposite of what it is. These are the times that the professor is not available to me. So that's a really great point for us, even as high school online educators, because a lot of online and some in-person high school courses do have office hours where the teacher or instructor is available for students, or tutoring, that kind of thing, if they're not totally on demand. So that's a really good point of clarification, again, to not assume that folks understand what that is, kind of part of the hidden curriculum of college and even high school.
Yeah, and back to the LMS, if you, the instructor, have been using this system for several years, you may think it's obvious, but it's not to the new people. Another point I would raise for students and for you to teach your students is to remember that they're not alone. Students are going to have problems, either academically or in their outside life, physical and mental health issues, financial things, family things, pandemics. And if you as a student run into one of these problems, and you will sooner or later, you're not the first person to have had this problem. And any good school is going to have people you can talk to about these things. There may be a health center, counseling center, financial aid. Talk to your professors and talk to other students.
Absolutely. Yeah. Use those resources.
Yeah. The college spends a lot of money making those resources available to help you out in these situations. Go ahead and use those things. Some life management stuff. Start early. Use your time wisely. This doesn't always sink in, and we can't say it's just the students who have this problem. I know when there's a deadline for grant applications to the National Science Foundation, almost all of them come in on the last day. But it's not like faculty started writing them that morning. That's just,
hopefully.
Yeah, maybe there's some of that too. Keep a calendar. This is something that's new to students when they get to college sometimes, because when you're in high school, I go to school at this time, I come home at that time, and maybe I've got sports or theater or something in the evening, but I don't have to think about appointments. And your schedule is going to get a little more complicated in college. You're going to have different classes in different rooms that have different schedules. You may have other meetings for clubs, or if you're in student government or a band or anything like that, and social events and deadlines. So keep a calendar so that you know what's going on. It's not going to be good enough to hold it in your head, and you don't want to miss appointments. Check your email at least once a day. So there are too many ways to communicate. You got email, you got social media, you got phones. Maybe there's something in your learning management system. There's Discord and on, and text messaging. I would argue that email is the best way to communicate among all of these. And the reason is it's the only system that has a robust anti-spam measure. I don't know if it's still true that most of the email that's sent is spam, but this has been a big problem historically, and it's been an arms race, and the anti-spam programs have won. You have something in your email that's going to dump those into a folder that you never have to look at, and it's pretty accurate. Occasionally it'll miss on one side or the other, but with email, it is true both that you're not going to be inundated with spam and that somebody you don't already know can contact you. With, phones don't have that feature. Most of the phone calls I get are spam or scams.
Oh my gosh, so many still.
Yeah. And then something like Discord, that's fine, but only the people who are in your Discord can contact you that way. So check your email, and that's what's being used in college and business and so on. And when the college tells you that you've been suspended, that's how they're going to let you know that. Or if there's some maybe less severe thing going on that you really need to deal with and you need to respond, that's how they can reach out to you.
That's a really good tip, too, because I know sometimes younger students feel like email is for old people. Nobody emails. But the thing to be doing as educators is to inform kids and help them learn that email really is a professional means of communication. So it's how you're going to communicate in your job. It's how you're going to communicate at school, especially higher ed as well. So encouraging them to get comfortable with that form of communication. You're not going to necessarily be texting your professor or tweeting at them, that kind of thing. So you're going to need to get comfortable with this form of communication that you might think is just for old people, but really isn't. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, another key difference between email and something like texting, and maybe this is a double-edged sword, is that your email sticks around, and I can go back. Some student that I haven't seen in 3 years asks me for a recommendation. I can go back and see what emails I had from them. Mm-hmm. Or if there's, a file somebody sent me 3 weeks ago, I can dig that out. But if it's buried in a text chain, that's much more difficult to search.
Absolutely.
Okay, so other general colleging advice. I talk about the plan, change, evaluate cycle. So whatever you're doing, if you're writing computer programs or you're writing essays or doing a musical performance or anything like that, there is, or doing scientific experiments, there is this cycle of saying, all right, I'm going to plan what I'm going to do next. And then I'm going to make a change. I'm going to make a change to my choreography or to my program or my document that I'm writing or my hypothesis. And then I'm going to evaluate that in some way. Did that change help? Did it work? Does the new feature that I added to my program do what it's supposed to do? And then you go back and plan the next thing you're going to do. And you want to make as many passes through that as possible and make one small change and say, all right, did that help? And maybe that's just momentarily glancing at it and deciding, but it may be more elaborate than that. And then make the next change. So specifically when students are learning to program, you want to first get running the simplest possible program. Maybe it's just, I'm learning a new programming language here that I've never used before. I'm just going to write a program that prints out hello world, just to make sure that my environment is working properly. I know how to type in this 2 or 3 line program, and I know how to run it. And then add your next little feature and test that out and make sure it's working, and keep adding one change at a time. Because if, on the other hand, you say, all right, I'm going to think about this and I'm going to write my entire page-long program and then I'm going to test it, if there's a problem, and there usually is a problem, it could be anywhere in that huge pile of code you wrote. In fact, there could be more than one. But if you just added 5 new lines and something that used to work is suddenly broken, it must be in the stuff you just added. And that makes debugging a lot easier. And that's going to follow, like I said, with writing and science and anything else you're doing as well.
Absolutely. I love that analogy. That is brilliant. That really helps it stick in my mind too. We talk so often about incremental change and incremental, small steps. And that's a great reminder for teachers and students alike, I think. If there was one thing that you thought holds students back, what do you think it is when they're entering college?
I think it's, again, this combination of imposter syndrome and fear of embarrassment, that students don't want to be noticed in class. They're afraid that everyone else understands it better, and they don't want to be found out. And if it's an actual mental health issue, this isn't going to get you out of imposter syndrome. But if you're just leaning in that direction and worrying that you're not good enough, the secret is everyone else is faking it too.
True.
Somebody said you shouldn't compare your blooper reel to other people's highlights.
Oh, I love that. Yes, that's so true.
And so go ahead and make mistakes. College and school in general is the place to do that, because there aren't severe consequences. And we want you to make mistakes. That's how you learn. The 2 ways you can learn are you've made a mistake, or maybe you read about a mistake that somebody else made. And that tells you how to adjust your mental models and your processes for doing things. So ask questions, definitely.
Yeah, I have always found that as a student myself, professors, teachers really appreciate when you ask a question. I think it shows the instructor that you care about the material as well, and you care about what you're learning and you're invested in it. I think about students who are online right now and who have grown up around technology, and especially with social media, and what you said about not comparing your blooper reel to someone's highlight reel. Social media causes us to constantly be comparing, whether we want to or not, whether we're passive users or more active users of it. And to allow kids that time to learn in high school, hey, we're in this together. And what is your purpose? Like, why are you here? And if you're in college then, or you're getting them prepared for college, what's your purpose? Why are you going to that class? Why are you studying these topics? And I think when students have a purpose, then they have a motivation to engage more deeply as well. So if we can help kids to understand why it is they're there, well, it's because I want to gain knowledge in this for, my job, or because I need these credits because these are my prereqs for the stuff I really want to do. Okay, whatever it is, let's be honest. But why are you there? And then focusing on how to be successful then in that environment, and that it is okay to ask questions, and that we want you to, and we want you to come to office hours and all of those things. Those are some things that we can absolutely foster in high school, brick and mortar and virtually as well. I appreciate so much your practical tips for us around managing time and figuring out how to communicate and all of those things, and physically getting ready for physically going to class. Those are all necessary too. I think those are things that we sometimes overlook in our online high schools that we could be better at reminding our students of, like, okay, next fall, here are the big changes you're going to experience. I also appreciate what you said about just conversational turn taking. So being able to engage in a class discussion or collaborating with your peers in small groups, or however it might look at the college level. I know some high school teachers who utilize Socratic seminars. And so if kids have been practicing with that in an online setting, that's going to be really helpful once they transition to in-person college as well. So another tidbit for teachers. But I just appreciate so much all of your insights and your focus on really relationship building with your students, that you want to interact with them and that you want feedback that's going to help drive the class and drive the course forward and make sure that all students are being successful. So thank you. Thank you for all of these insights. I think it gives high school online educators a lot to think about in terms of whether they're a content teacher and they're thinking about how they can maybe frame some of the things they're doing, or just remind kids, hey, and then when you go to college, this might look this way instead. Or those teachers who are teaching like advisory homeroom type courses. All right, here are some of the soft skills we're going to practice, or we're going to write some emails this week, whatever it might be. There's so much to it. There is so much. We got to minimize our assumptions and really help scaffold and prepare kids well so that they do well once they leave us.
Yeah, and the advice about imposter syndrome and so on applies to the teachers as well. That you can hear all of this advice of things you should do, and you may not have time to get all of them done with all of the pressures of teaching. And I should confess that I haven't always done everything I'm talking about here. I still need to make videos on how to use my learning management system.
We are no perfect people, right? Always striving, though. I like that.
And go ahead and show the students that.
Yes, right. Absolutely. Let them see your humanity as well, and that you're working to do things better, or that you're learning as well. I think that's huge for kids. I so appreciate your time today. I have one final question for you. I'm asking all guests this season, if there was one thing, material or otherwise, you could give to every teacher in the U.S., what would it be and why?
Well, my first answer is money, because I know our schools are majestically underfunded. I tell people to vote for school levies, but that's probably preaching to the choir for your audience. While we're fantasizing, we can talk about time. There never seems to be enough of it. And ironically, the stress of teaching comes from not having enough time to spend on our students and with our students. I think generally we love our work. There's just too much of it.
Yes.
Let me say a bundle of 3 particular books that I found inspiring to teach from. The first one is called Small Teaching by James Lang, and it has a bunch of little things you can do to make your curriculum and your classroom experience go better. And he makes a big point of, you don't have to completely redesign all of your classes. You could just throw one of these things in once and work up as you see that they look useful. There's apparently a sequel called Small Teaching Online, which is co-written with Flower Darby. I have not read that one, but if it's any similar quality, that will be good too. The second one that I haven't read in a while, I want to reread at some point, is called Geeky Pedagogy by Jessamine Newhouse. And she says, all right, if we're teachers, we're geeks. We have been the ones who want to take notes and have spreadsheets and read all the background material and so on. And if you have those talents and those proclivities, use those and say, all right, apply those to the task of teaching and to figuring out the puzzle of your students. And then the third one, and this is maybe the mind-blowing one, is Ungrading, which is a collection of essays edited by Susan Bloom. And the ungrading movement says grades might not be a good thing, because they get students to think about how well they're doing rather than what they're doing. It causes a lot of stress for everyone involved. You have to have these elaborate systems for how many points each thing is worth and how many points off if something's this many days late, and cheating policies, because under that stress, students sometimes get to, all right, I need to figure out how to get this in, and I'll pull something off the internet. And maybe grades aren't even that good at what they purport to do, which is predicting future success. Now, there are some places like the Evergreen State College that have done away with them completely. But if your institution doesn't do that, there are compromises you can make. You can say, well, we're going to have an ungraded quiz today. Up to what I've been doing, which is saying, all right, we're going to meet a couple times over the course of the semester, and then you're going to tell me what grade you think you should get. And I find that I can usually just do that and say, yeah, you know where you are. That sounds about right. Now, occasionally, I reserve the right to adjust those, but it is not the case that everybody says, well, I didn't turn anything in all semester, but I think I deserve an A. And in fact, it's more common for students to be a little bit too hard on themselves. And this collection of essays is from people at different grade levels in different disciplines. So you may find somebody who's like you, whoever you are.
I love that. I am such a bookworm, so I absolutely appreciate these 3 recommendations, and we'll link to them all in our show notes for sure. Peter Drake, it has been a total pleasure. If somebody listening wants to get in touch with you or just wants to learn a little bit more about what you do, how can they reach out to you?
They could email me at drake@lclark.edu. I have been involved in social media, but I have recently moved over to an open source social media platform that is not owned by a particular corporation that's trying to keep you engaged and stressed out. And that's called Mastodon. And the way to find me on there would be to go to qoto.org/@PeterDrake.
Perfect. We'll have that all in our notes. So if those of you want to communicate more with Peter, absolutely can. I know this has been a total pleasure for me. It's been really inspiring. I want to focus more on what I'm doing as an educator rather than just how well I'm doing it too now, and continuous improvement for sure. But thank you so much again for your insights, for your advice, and just helping us focus in a little bit more on what we can be doing K through 12 to really be preparing kids for the realities of college and what happens next after high school. So thanks again for the work you do with students, and thanks for talking to us today.
Oh, yeah, thank you for a great conversation.
Thanks for listening to this episode of SYS Presents Adventures in Online Education. Special thanks to my guest today, Peter Drake. Peter taught us to think practically about how we can prepare our online high school students for success in college and beyond. If you liked what you heard today, please hit subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. Want to connect? On Twitter, you can follow the show at SYS Presents. We love hearing from you. If you're interested in finding out more about SYS Education and our products and services, head to syseducation.org. Lastly, this podcast wouldn't be possible without our exceptional team at SYS Education, including my dream team consisting of sound engineer Natalie Farrell, graphic designer and social media and website manager Lexi Boren, and producer Bo Neal. Thanks for listening today, and remember, we can learn new things.
Thanks for listening.